welcome to our webinar today. As it says there on the screen, we'll go ahead and cover the F9 version 5, some new features or the enhanced features that are in version 5. We're going to build on some of the knowledge that we've gained from the last couple webinars. And of course, as is customary with all of our webinars here for F9, I'm going to go ahead and grab that here. And we'll see what we've already learned in the last two webinars. We had the basic advanced F9 webinar. And I'll encourage you right when we get started here, I do have all the phone lines muted. So if you do have a question or a comment or want to see more about something that we're going over there, you guys can certainly go ahead and chat those using the chat function with WebEx over on the right side of the screen or in the menu bar over there. And we'll go ahead and respond to those as we can throughout the session. And we will also gather those up if we have some follow-up for you guys offline or after the session. We will head and take that chat. We do save all that chat so we can go ahead and follow up after. So to start off this webinar on version 5 new features, we'll just review very quickly, I promise, some information from the last two webinars, the basic and the advanced. I talked about using an Excel sheet or an Excel tab for named cells, for universal control cells or a control data tab, so that if you have 10 or 20 different tabs of information, they're all pointing back to one cell that happens to say the period of May or August or something like that. So that way there's no confusion when it comes to every report, which period we're reporting on. And we also have the named cells. If you remember, we can just name the cell company or something like that instead of referencing an absolute value and going back and forth with tabs and formula names. Those named cells make it very easy to reference those across the entire spreadsheet, across different tabs very easily. We all add some check formulas in Excel to make sure that our reports are in balance, whether it's our assets, liabilities, and equity all balancing out on the balance sheet, or parts of our P&L balancing over to the balance sheet as needed. Some nice Excel formulas to make sure to give us a double check, a nice visual cue that everything is in balance before we start grinding through a report to see what's going on there. The F9 Analyze feature will tell us accounts that we are and are not using on particular reports. It'll also help us to look at recalculation time if that's a concern of ours with F9. We also have the drill down function that we see on the right side of the point slide there. We drill down and look at things. This particular shows it broken out by branch, so we can see each different branch, and we can see that 3 of them have a balance and 1 has a debit balance. So maybe that's atypical, and we can then take that down in branch 40 to see what's going on there. And there's all sorts of other ways to drill down by the whole account, just by certain account numbers or certain departments. It's a good example of showing us why we want to have that drill down function to see exactly what makes up a total value in a sheet. We also have different ways to force Excel to recalculate. We have standard F9 recalculation that a lot of you use, which relies on Excel to know which formulas depend on other values and which things to recalculate in which order. We have Shift 9, which will just recalculate the particular sheet or tab that we are on in Excel, not the entire workbook document. We have Control-Alt-Shift F9, which will force recalculation of every cell across the entire workbook. In case that's something we want to do, a lot of times when we're troubleshooting here internally or even doing our own financials, we use Control-Alt-Shift F9 to make sure that we have everything recalculated in that sheet, and then we can verify that we have the data correct, or we might have some more work to do. Or just go ahead and select a cell or hit F2 and then hit Enter just to calculate one particular cell if we'd like to do that as well to get an update. We looked at the chart and the list functions. As you see down there at the bottom, those have to do with budgeting. So we can go ahead and make a chart and get all the information out and then use that as the input for our budgeting into F9 for our budget write-back process we talked about and Randy gave us good details on last time. We have some list functions. That can show us all the different branches, all the account descriptions, all different ways to use periods, all the other things in F9. There's about 10 different ways that we can list things out that we can see visually exactly what's in your database and different options for formulas and those types of things. We talked about statistical analysis, as we call it, or statistics accounts. Some of you use Agility statistics accounts and then use those for financial reporting. We have a lot of customers who use different data sets, off Excel data sets for that. So we talked about different ways to go ahead and have a number of employees, number of trucks, per route, all the different types of information that you keep outside of Agility, to have that in a sheet and then have that as a named cell, that we can easily reference that and we can see new per employee or profitability per truck or per route or something like that. So there's all sorts of different ways to use that within Excel and within F9 to get the reports that you're looking for there. Now that's probably enough on the view side there. We'll be happy to give you more information about any of those needed at session. We'll get some of the newer features here, the expanded features in version 5, and we're going to start with scheduled tasks. We're going to start with two of the more rare scheduled tasks. We export of the GL information in Agility. So right now, we use a menu item that you can certainly automate if you want to go ahead and export that data whenever you need to go ahead and import that back into F9. We've had some customers that have automated that export either on a regular basis or on a nightly basis or run macro as needed with an import query macro, as we call it. So what happens is we will go ahead and have a task that runs through the automated processing is how you schedule that. That file is then created and usually saved out on a system somewhere. You rely on you guys for a lot of the scripting on where you want to put that file and how you want to save it at that point, but we'll go ahead and have that macro run and save that text file out there for last year or this year or the last 2 years of data. How we quantify that for you and whatever you need, we can certainly help you with that. I will let you know, though, since that is a custom cyber query for each one of you, we can get the basics that we have certainly for no charge, but if you do want us to customize that or give you a setup assistance, something like that, that probably would require some billable services to go ahead and get that rolling on your system if we needed to be in that way. But we'll certainly provide a basic one for you at no charge if you like. A couple of customers that have asked us about the GL translation process and how to automate that, the FMU32 or the data pump process. There are some different ways. It's more of a Windows automation function. We use batch files to go ahead and run that process. And then on the Windows side, using Task Scheduler, you automate that process. That seems to be a little bit risky for some of our customers. There's no way to really undo a GL translate, so we would go ahead and strongly encourage and perhaps even require you to have good file backups in place and have those BTR files or those data marts out there and probably sequential backups for at least a few weeks just in case we have something today and we don't find out for a week. We want to make sure we can go back and undo that and get to a pre-version of the file just in case we need to without affecting all of our financial report data. For the lesser-known getting automation processes that we have in F9, the most popular ones, and it's brand new in F9 version 5, is actual tasks that are internal to F9. I'll show you those here in just a minute, but we will kind of go over the basics of what's like here in F9. And I'll make the recalculation of financial statements. See, we have a there at the bottom that shows we can just go ahead and automate a lot of different functions. We can automate the calculation or recalculation of the financial reports. Some customers have very large reports that take a long time to recalculate with many different tabs. Times we can have those recalculate in the middle of the night. Then the next time you open it, it'll have that recent data as of the night before in that sheet already for you to hopefully do some time. And it's a little bit easier, hopefully, to save you guys a little bit of time. We've got people who go and get coffee or go to lunch and wait for some recalculate. We'd like to minimize that if we could. It's their coffee, but it's nice to have it on your time instead of waiting for different options when it comes to financial report output. Normally in F9, we have a lot of the publish functions, F9 to email, which puts everything to values and puts those formulas as a comment on the cell. That still works the same way that it always has. There are different ways that we can automate that process. We see at the bottom there that save formulas as values checkbox. There's different ways that we can save the document or put the document differently without affecting the original. We can resave it with a different name. We can resave it just with values. We can print a different directory. At the bottom there, we have it at the F9 version 5 or F9 V5 directory, but we can just as well put that in a different directory if we'd like. Other changes we'll take a look at here in a second as for how often we do that task and if it runs every 5 minutes or every day or something like that. Go ahead and switch back over to F9 and go ahead and see if we can't get that for you here. Bear with me for a minute. I'll go ahead and we'll take a quick look at the scheduled tasks here so we can see how that works. The window that we do have here for the scheduled tasks, I have a series of tasks. Some of those run often, some of those don't at all. I don't have any that are scheduled here, and just have a link to the actual task file if you want to take a look at that. I'm going to select this bottom one just to kind of show you what it looks like here. I'll go ahead and click Next on that Test 1 task. Go ahead and take a look at it here and see what it's actually doing. It's grabbing this exact report called Sample Financials. It's giving it a new name of Sample Financials New. And go ahead and recalculate that. I really see a need to print it. We're going to formulas as values, as we talked about. It even has a little pop-up that tells us, you know, give it under a new name, because if you're going to override a report with values, that might affect someone else who's trying to use F9. I dename that when I save it, and I append a date timestamp to it. And I save it just as a regular spreadsheet. I save it to this reports directory here in F9. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and rename it with a new name and append the date and time to it just to make doubly sure that I don't overwrite existing financial reports. So as far as scheduling and what it does for this particular task, which report, and what I'm going to do with that. Next, I actually want to go ahead and send my email here, and this happens to be my SMTP here internally to go ahead and email. I'm going to email that to myself, and I can any kind of message I want at the bottom and attach that report here to an email that I can send to an alias or to an individual user, whatever I like to do there. And then I can just finally look at the last screen here. If I want to go ahead and run this one time, run a day, maybe run it each night, or day, or something like that, I can certainly set that up. Weekly, monthly, whatever the different options are. I'm just going to keep it at one time here. I want to do that every 5 minutes, and as long as it's going to go, I want to stop a running task. If I want to expire at a certain time, if I stop, I might look at if it's on AC power or battery power. You know, there's different ways that I can start and stop the task around that. If it runs too long, I can stop it. If I want to delay it a certain amount of time before I run it, I can do that here as well. I have to do that here on my PC, but we do have a lot of options depending on your setup that you might want to use there. I'm going to just keep this one time, and you'll see that's in the past, so it's not really going to run it when I click Save here right now. Create a task, but I will go back to this screen here, and I can go ahead and check this task, and I actually run it right now. Go ahead and click that task, and what it's going to do right now is it's going to go ahead and email that over to me, and also going to save it in that F9V5 reports directory. And I'll certainly go to that here as well and show you what that looks like. You just have one right here that's saved. I'm going to go ahead and open that. It has actually went ahead and calculated this report. I didn't have any valid data in it, but my F9 formulas are here as comments, just like it is from normal F9, and it has values here, so I could email that to anyone, whether they had F9 or not, and it would really run through just fine and tell them exactly what they needed to see. So even though I don't have F9, this particular version of Excel that I'm on right now does not have the F9 add-in at the top. But I still can bring this up. I still can look at all this data, and I can still verify everything as I go. It's just a comment in the cell. So I can certainly go ahead and share that with anybody I need to in my company on a regular basis, and I can certainly automate our scheduler there. And I do that for a variety of different reports. I wanted to go back in to that particular one, and I wanted to rename it differently, save it as a PDF instead, move where it goes in the email. I can do that at any time. I do want to go ahead and set that up. Or let's say we're going to do that for tomorrow at 2 a.m. or something like that. We'll do 2:46 in the morning, and we'll do it every day. Maybe we'll do that. So I'll go ahead and click Save. And I'm going to go ahead and click Yes here just so I can bring this back, and you can see it's set up to run tomorrow at 2:46 in the morning This happens to be server time, or this is my PC, so it's PC time is what it looks at there. So I can run that every night, and I can email that to me or an email alias or a group of different people, and I can certainly automate that process however I need to. So that's one of the real popular features of F9 version 5 are the new scheduled tasks that they did there, and different ways that you can name those files, save files, calculate, email them automatically to a group of different people, and that scheduler tool is included with version 5 at no additional charge. I've heard from our friends at F9 that they are creating a new, more robust scheduling tool, and I've heard that's going to be beta tested here probably in the fourth quarter of 2014 is what I'm told. We'll have to see. I think we're going to try and get a copy of that so we can look at that. I heard, though, that there will be an additional charge for that. So I'm not sure how many of you will be looking for additional scheduling functionality, maybe for tracking of mails and making sure that people saw and open sheets and exactly what happened last week. Those types of things I think are going to be part of their new tool. That's part of this. This is more of a, yes, we ran a task and it went and everything's fine. There's not a whole lot of error tracking in the back end. And I think that's what their new tool is going to do a lot of. Basics of the tasks here. And one last note that I'll say and kind of segue back into the part of it here is I'm running this as my current user that I'm logged into to win to F9. There's ways to change the user if I wanted to here. Just like you can in F9, you can actually change the way that F9 works by changing the user that you're running as. And part of the user security they have here in F9 that we're going to go over here now. But there are ways to change that for all these scheduled tasks can run as a different user if that's something that we need to do. Now that brings us over to user security, which is the other big feature that is brand new here in F9 version 5. And what they been tasked with is trying to find some ways to look at role-based security for F9. A lot of companies were going to F9 and saying, hey, we can't have all these users seeing all this sensitive data. We have some users that want to see everything, but over in branch 2 doesn't need to see what branch 1 is doing or doesn't need to see payroll accounts or something like that. So what they've done is what they call the user security module. It is a separate program here in F9 that we're going to take a look at here in just a moment. But it's really kind of a basic security model as far as how they track it. It's a separate setup from Windows Security. What we do is we go ahead and set up which databases we have with F9, and then go ahead and enable security for all those databases. And then also say, okay, these are the different ways we're going to mask accounts. And we're going to go ahead and define some users and some user groups, and then go ahead and match those up with certain access for certain users or certain groups of users. Some people have all access, some only have access to certain branches or certain departments or certain pieces of account structure. Depending how you set that up, you can orient that however you like. But it's very particular in exactly how you want to set that up. It's very customizable. As with any security module, we'll go ahead and access this particular database for security. You have to type in a password. It's a top secret password that's probably the same for every single F9 security user because I have not changed that yet. But certainly customize that as you see fit. So we have here in the security module is at the top I have the F9 company. As you know, every single F9 spreadsheet references a particular company or BTR file in these cases. And I have 3 of them defined. I've got a 2013 BTR, I've got a sample F9 data, and I've got webinar 3. See over here on the right, security is on. So security is enabled. So if I have F9 users that are using F9 and they try to access a database that is not on this list, say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have security for that database, so I can't access it for anyone. So it's very particular with how we set that up. The webinar 3 database here, I'm going to go ahead and probably look at that one here in just a bit. List, we have account masks, which this does is gives us a lot of different ways to say what users have access to. There's different ways to look at it. We're not really limiting access with account masks. What we're doing here is granting access to users for what we want them to show. I'm going to go ahead and put this down to just show webinar 3 because that's what I'm working now. And yet I have an account mask here that it's the everything, which is the asterisk, similar to the F9 formulas. I have asterisk for all 3, which is making everything. all balance types, all currencies. The access and drill by transaction don't really apply in this case. But if all the accounts in Webinar 3, that's one level of account masks that I will give to my users, or maybe the people who are balancing accounts every month, those types of things. Then another one here that just says, okay, this user, if this account can only see branch 20 under this mask. And this user here can only see our 4-digit accounts that start with 1. This one can see them that starts with 2. Allows accounts from 1,000 to 6,999. This one allows accounts from 8,000 to 9,999. And you can probably see if I enable both of these, that really includes the 7,000 accounts, which have to be payroll accounts. So that's why I would probably go ahead and eliminate payroll. Is just go ahead and make 2 different ones. The F9 formula, I can have that range of accounts here that'll apply. So we'll give them 1,000 all the way through 6,999 with that particular mask. So there are different ways to set this up. It's a lot of playing. I can go ahead and edit this mask if I wanted to change that to a different value. I can still look at this real quick, and I can edit all different pieces of it, and it knows the number of segments and account structure. Maybe I want to change that to 7,900 or something like that. I could certainly go ahead and make that change very easily and say, okay, updated successfully, it tells me. So now go ahead and modify that for all my users just from this particular place with that particular account mask. After these users, here's all the users I have set up. There's myself, and there's Randy, and there's a couple of test accounts. We have a group that's all access for the users. We have a user here that's branch 20, and we have some other miscellaneous users scattered throughout as well. Got some different groups and users. Just like Windows Security, we might have an admin group or an all access group or just branch 20 access group. It's easier to use it in groups instead of individual users. That way you can monitor, who belongs in which groups and move those back and forth without making a whole ton of changes. With Unity, we've looked at masks, we've looked at users. Access is where we put those together. Go ahead and filter that down to just 3, which is what I want. So now I see all our masks here at the top, and our users and groups over here on the top right. And the bottom is the access that we have deemed necessary for everyone here. You can see branch 20 group, and then only branch 20 accounts. And then it has to be user 20, which I made up myself. That particular user 20 can only see branch 20 information. And I'll show you real quickly here how that works so you see what those account masks function. I have Kevin, that's me. I can only see the accounts 1,000 through 6,999 and 7,900 through 9,999 because I'm excluded from the payroll accounts. And then all access group, which of course has all asterisks, which is all access. And we have the all access group here, which test 1 is a part of that all access group. I'll show you here real quick what that looks like on the F9 side, but just keep in mind that we can delete these, we can add them, we can add new ones. I encourage you to probably only have 1 person, maybe 2 that administrate this, because as you can see, it can get messy pretty fast if we have people that are adding and subtracting account access. So the all access group, which is probably most of you on the phone that are the ones that are going to be balancing financials, those people need to make sure they have all access if security is enabled so that they can get their jobs done effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the F9 menu, and I'm in the control financials here. As I am pointed to the Webinar 3 data. Go to company access. You'll see I'm using this F9 security, which happens to be a default location for F9 security. You can have it on your shared drive or wherever you guys see fit. I happen to be a power user, so I've got it on my C drive because I happen to be the server account here as well. So maybe go ahead and change that just for demonstration purposes. I can do that here. Current Windows login, which is going to be the default. I'm going to go ahead and that login that has all access here. You can see I have a couple different data sets instead of just one that went ahead and there and applied. And recalculate this, so bear with me for just 1 minute. Let's take a second to recalculate. Now in my P&L account, I'm going to go ahead and look at my sales account here, and I'm going to drill down on that by branch. I'll show you that I've got important ones here. These 20, 30, 30, and 40 are the branches that I have here for a particular user. Also go down here and look. Go to these 7,000. I do have access to these 7,000 series accounts as well, because this user has access to everything. So I can see salaries and wages. I can go ahead and drill that down, look at a branch. I look at it down to the whole account level. If I want to isolate that, there's some that are different departments, 25, 27, 28. Go ahead and isolate that to whatever level I have, because this particular user has access. Go ahead and change that real quick. You would have a different user to be logging in and logging out. I'm just logging this way just to show you how it works with different users here. Go ahead and log in. Instead of S1, I might make it user 20. And recalculate that. Number change. The salaries and wages changed. Now we'll drill down. If we look at that by branch, we'll see this user only has access to branch 20. It shows branch 20. It doesn't even show the other options. It's not displayed to the user that they are limited in their view. So that's something we're going to have to be careful of and make sure users understand. If I'm expecting something to balance out and I just have branch 20, it may not balance out. So really you have to be careful if someone's job is to balance financial reports and they access multiple branches or multiple departments or all different accounts. We're going to make sure that that's set up the way you expect so that there's no surprises and users wondering why a report doesn't balance. But we use that drill down function to see exactly what's going on with that. And we see that as just branch 20 for this particular account, which happens to be a salaries and wages account. Now, one step further, if I go ahead and log in as myself, money doesn't think I need access to these kind of things, so I'm going to go ahead and use my current Windows login. I'm going to recalculate that. Be part of that branch 20 access group because I do have access to just that one particular branch, the same as the last user there. So there are ways we can limit that. If I was that account where it didn't give me that access, then go to zeros there. And I can go ahead and take a look and say, let's see, K Hughes is the branch 20, and we have K Hughes being on those accounts. So it shows me that branch 20. I can delete this access. I don't know if that's going to apply real time, but we can certainly try it here and see. We calculate that, and usually that would go to 0 as that particular user. I think we have to log out and log back in of F9 for those security changes to take place there. So that just illustrates for you a little bit of how that security works, the different ways that you can limit that by user groups. There's all sorts of different things you can do, and really it's customized by individual company what you guys are looking to do or what you like to do with that particular screen there. And I've got a couple more things to go over, but I would go ahead and recommend for you guys to use the chat function. If you have any questions for Randy or myself or anything about what we've presented here in the webinar or anything else on F9, go ahead and use that chat function. We'll be happy to answer that as we go. We've got a few minutes left here in the webinar, or we can follow up later and get back to you offline and know that we have that all figured out. I would probably want to reiterate again, as far as the line side of this with security, I can see there's nothing here that tells me, there's no red flashing exclamation point or anything that says, hey, you're only limited to branch 20 here. You have to know that as a user, you may be limited from a security standpoint across the different documents, across everything else. It's kind of limited to just those particular branches or just those particular accounts. So to keep that in mind when we look. If we scroll up a little bit here, as you can see, our balance sheet versus our P&L does not balance. And because we had things that were balancing across branches there. So that's one red flag and one other good reason why we like to have those Excel formulas there, because if there's something limiting us in the back end, that's a great way for us to see that is by having those balancing formulas there. And we'll go to the F9 security here real quick and just kind of we've got the account mask, we have the user set up, and then we have manage access is where we spend most of our time, which is to go ahead and put everything together. We've got access group, we have a 20 group, we have some individual user changes here as well. So K Hughes is going to be limited on his accounts the next time he logs in and recalculates a sheet. And I'll go ahead and remind you also, whenever you open a sheet with F9, it's going to display the data according to the last time it was recalculated, because F9 is in manual calculation mode, hence the name F9. So if I open this up, the next person who opens this is going to see exactly what I see here. And if they could change and recalculate, at that point is when the user security will kick in. It'll say, well, you have access to these accounts, you don't have access to those accounts. So keep in mind, a user, if they open up a spreadsheet and they don't recalculate anything, they can see whatever the last person saw, but they may not know what they're looking at. And once they recalculate, that security will kick in, and then it will certainly let them know that this is the information that they're expecting. You can find the basic and the advanced F9 webinars, and hopefully this session pretty soon if we don't mess up the recording too bad. On YouTube, we have a DMSI PST channel. Solutions team or something like that, I guess, is what that stands for. So those other two are already out there, and this one should be out there pretty soon. And we have the other two PowerPoints are already out on our download site, and we have a link to the folder and the directory where those are for the other two. This one will be out there pretty soon also. If you need that link, you can certainly go ahead and email Randy or myself, and our emails are there at the bottom of the screen. And have a great day.